Hi, welcome to MK True Crime. I am Arthur Aidala, and I'm lucky enough to be the host today with two great lawyers. One, Matt Murphy. Well, in my world, Matt Murphy is known as Matt Guitar Murphy in the Blues Brothers movie, and he's one of the best guitarists in the blues realm. But I have one of the best lawyers right here with us. Matt Murphy was a prosecutor for over 2 decades, and now he's out there fighting for the citizens of America. And Phil Holloway, Philip Andrew Holloway, he is omnipresent. I see him every time I turn on the TV, and I need some significant legal analysis. And we are going to start off with a doozy of a case with a guy who decided to make his alias the name of Arthur. Come on, man. Come on, Nicholas Rossi. You got to go with Arthur Knight. So, Mr. Murphy, why don't you give us a little background about what Mr. Rossi was convicted of yesterday?
Yeah, this case is just wild, Arthur. This one is, so essentially this guy was charged with what would commonly be known as a date rape scenario. He had a whirlwind relationship with this woman. They got engagement rings within the first month. And as she started to figure out for lack of a better term, what a complete freak this guy was, she decided to break it off, and he sexually assaulted her. He then, in 2020, he faked his own death, and he moved to Europe. And this guy took on an English accent, claimed to be an Irish orphan named Arthur Knight. You can't make this up. And he fought extradition under a mistaken identity claim for over 3 years while being held in custody in Scotland. So this is just an absolutely wild case. Came back, was ultimately extradited, went on trial, and was convicted yesterday for rape in the state of Utah.
So Phil Holloway, I mean, is that the best alias you go with, Arthur Knight, like the Knights of the Round Table? King Arthur?
That's what I thought. I thought about that. Is he talking about King Arthur? And that's exactly what went through my mind when I first saw that was what his alias was. But the irony here, guys, is that this guy fought extradition for 3 years. Obviously unsuccessfully. And by the way, nobody really ever wins extradition fights. It's very, very rare. But this is for a case. I mean, what he was convicted of carries up to 5 years in prison. Now, what I don't know, and it's worth discussing maybe, is whether he gets credit for all of that time that he spent in jail overseas waiting his extradition. I mean, if I were the prosecutor, I would say, no, he doesn't get credit for it because he was fighting extradition. That's on him. If he had waived extradition and he's just simply waiting on somebody to send a plane to bring him back, then maybe I could see you get some credit for pretrial confinement. And the other irony, guys, on this case is that this was a case that was alleged to have occurred in 2008. And of course, there was no claim made by the victim in the case until 2022. And I think that but for this crazy nonsense of him claiming to be an Irish orphan, which was demonstrably untrue, and of course he later even confessed that he was lying about it. If he hadn't done that, he might have had a very defensible case. Who knows? But he clearly qualifies for the Dumbest Criminal of the Year award for claiming that kind of defense.
I believe when he was overseas, he got married. And I think we have a little clip from his wife, and we could go to listen to SOT 1.
This Nicholas Rossi, when you actually read about what he's done, he seems to have done it consistently through his life. So why is it literally going to stop when he meets me? I know my husband. He would never put me at risk. He would never hurt me, abuse me, do anything like what I read about this Nicholas Rossi.
Well, Matt, she's wrong. So, as a prosecutor, you had to gauge people's credibility. She came off as pretty credible. I mean, I think she really believed what she was just saying, but she was wrong.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. She believed every word of what she just said, and kind of goes to the manipulative powers of this guy. And just going back to what Phil said earlier, look, I couldn't agree more. Had this guy just taken the phone call from the police and said, "Hey guys, sorry for the misunderstanding. We had consensual sex. It was consent all the way. She's bitter because of the breakup and because I wouldn't pay for her engagement ring, whatever." when I rotated into sex, if I can share a quick story, my first day in sexual assault, my old boss, Chuck Middleton, pulled me in and said, our filing standard in this unit is you never file a one-on-one. In other words, you always must have compelling corroborating evidence before we launch the missile, so to speak, and file sexual assault charges against anybody. You have to have that corroborating information. And Philip's absolutely right. If this guy had just not faked his own death, and of course, I don't mean to be glib because sexual assault is terrible, of course, but this guy, I've never seen a better case, I think in my entire career, of what is known as consciousness of guilt. And all of that, he's such a weirdo. He's speaking with a fake English accent. And
you know what? Let's
himself.
listen to him, Matt. Let me interrupt you. Let's just listen to him. Let's play SOT 2 and listen to what he's got to say.
We were once a normal family, but thanks to the media, our lives have been interrupted. And we'd like privacy, and I would like to go back to being a normal husband. But I can't, because I can't breathe, I can't walk. People say that's an act. Let me try to stand up. Let me try to stand up. Exactly, exactly.
What do you say to someone who believes that you are Nicholas Alaverdi?
I am not, Andrea, I am not Nicholas Alaverdi, and I do not know how to make this clearer.
What do you say to people who say these are crocodile tears? He's putting on a show. This is all an act.
Oh,
Andrea,
no,
that's a low blow. That's a right low blow.
How many Harry Potter episodes did he have to watch to get that accent down, is what I want to know. I mean, it's too much. You can't make this stuff up.
Phil, Phil, here's what happens now. Now you get the call. You get the call that they're going to extradite him, and that's your client, Phil Holloway. That is your client.
Yeah.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen who are watching MK True Crime right now how you're going to represent him.
Well, the first thing, I'm going to get a big check if that's the client. But no, seriously, you've got to say, look, first off, don't say a word. You got to keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything. We'll talk about it first. We're not going to fight extradition because, you're going to lose that. We're going to go ahead and go to the jurisdiction that wants to try you, wherever that is. So you get that out of the way. You cooperate to the extent you cooperate. You pick your battles, right? You don't die on stupid hills like that, and you damn sure don't go on television wearing that crazy getup and the fake oxygen mask and all this. And by the way, he was apprehended. He was apparently treated for COVID in a hospital overseas, and somebody recognized his tats, right? So it just goes downhill for him from there. But you tell him, don't go on TV, don't give interviews, don't say stupid stuff. If I could give one piece of free legal advice to everybody in America, it's don't say stupid stuff. If you say nothing at all, that's great. But the worst thing you could do is saying something that's ridiculously stupid. So you go ahead and you get him over here, and then you look and see, okay, do they have any corroborating evidence? If they don't, then maybe just remaining silent is the way to go. They did have another claim, however, from 2008. In Georgia, we call this a similar transaction. It's 404B. Other jurisdictions call it some different things, but it's basically the idea is if someone does something criminal and they do it in a unique way that it's equivalent of their criminal signature, so to speak, it can be admissible. So in this case, another victim testified and said, look, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he did something to me very, very similar under similar circumstances, whirlwind relationship and all that, same year, and the judge allowed it in. So it was basically one case propped up by another case, if you will. Each one of those cases, however, independently had no objective corroboration. There's no forensics. There's none of that kind of stuff that you can get this many years later. So I think by far telling him to keep his mouth shut and don't say anything stupid would be the primary advice I would give him or anybody else.
Thank you for that opening. Let's play back-to-back SOT 3 and SOT 6, and let's hear him continue to flap his mouth.
My name is Arthur Knight Brown. My date of birth is 22nd of the 11th, 1986.
Your Honor, Tamara Vasquez for the state. This individual has been extradited, and he has not admitted his name or birth date accurately. And so I don't think we're going to be successful on that today either.
Objection, my lady. That is complete hearsay, and I would ask your ladyship that the prosecution should cause for.
So, gentlemen, any thoughts, if this is your client, of asking for a mental health examination by the court? Folks should know that the court has the ability, when someone is in custody, to assign a doctor, usually at the taxpayer's expense, to see if someone is up for the task of standing trial. I'm sure both of you have seen that in your careers. What do you think?
Well, that's why you're so good at what you do, Arthur, because I didn't even thought about that. Of course, that's probably the only hope you've got in something like this. And the problem is that he's not going to get an insanity out of this, but it may, if you can establish some sort of mental illness, you may have a shot at some sort of mitigating pitch to the sentencing court. But with that second victim, we call that 1108 in California. And, he's coming up for trial on that. I think he's ultimately going to get hammered. But again, because he's such a weirdo, I think that that's probably the only hope you would have, right? Like get some sort of like dissociative disorder diagnosis or something along those lines, so that at least you can make some sort of pitch to a judge that the guy's mentally ill. Other than that, he's a bully and a liar who likes to sexually abuse women.
Well, didn't he say that one of the victims tried to rape him? Don't we have that SOTS? That's SOTS 6?
He wanted to make a report that he had been raped by his girlfriend.
Did he say anything about whether she had reported that him raping her?
Yes.
And do you remember the timing, like how recently she had reported him raping her?
He stated that she had recently reported that he had sexually assaulted her, and therefore he wanted to make a report against her.
Okay. Also for rape?
Correct.
Whose statement is this?
This is Nicholas Rossi's voluntary witness statement.
Please.
I, Nicholas Rossi, hereby state that on 6 to 8 occasions of Orem, Utah, forcibly held me down and kissed me. She would wear lingerie, and I would prompt her to get off of me. I would articulate to her that she and I should not be doing this, yet she continued to do so, regardless of me saying that I did not want it. She would repeatedly insert my penis into her vagina, and she would say, "You like that, don't you?" She would scream and yell, "Yes, yes, give it to me." I would cooperate because I felt that she was being honest with me, because she told me that she loved me, which turned out to be a lie.
I want to start by thanking the producers of MK True Crime, who recommended that we play that very entertaining SOT. Well, guys, now how do we feel about having his mental health examined?
Look,
because boy, that's a new one for me. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe he does need a mental health evaluation. The best thing he can do, though, right now, he's going to get hammered on this second trial. The same evidence is going to come in. In fact, both of these victims are going to testify again. It's just going to be, the names are going to be switched as to who's the named victim in the indictment. And all this other stuff is going to come in. So it's the same kind of trial, almost back to back. And, the things that you say can and will be used against you in court. So you see there that these words are coming up. I think they could probably be used against him at trial. The best thing he could do really is to see if the prosecutors will just, let him cop a plea, let him plead guilty to it, get some kind of concurrent sentence or something, and cut your losses, because when you behave in that way, you're either just really, really stupid or you're insane. And I personally think he's not insane. I think he knows what he's doing. So I think he's just really, really dumb.
It takes a certain amount of intelligence to evade the law for that amount of time and create a new identity. Arthur Knight may not been the most creative name, soiling the name of Arthur. How dare he? But he was convicted this week, and he will stand trial again. So he's going to spend some time behind bars. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about how Bryan Kohberger is doing in prison. And maybe I could give you a little update along those lines on my client, Ghislaine Maxwell, and how she's doing in prison as well, and what judges said about her grand jury minutes being released. Don't go away. We'll be right back on MK True Crime.
That cookie calling your name at 3 p.m.? Yeah. The midnight fridge raids, the extra slice of pizza you swore you wouldn't eat. If you feel like your cravings control you, it is not just willpower. It could be your gut crying for help. That's why I want to tell you about Just Thrive Probiotic and their digestive bitters. See, modern diets often lack essential bitters compounds that manage appetite hormones like GLP-1, the same hormone in those expensive weight management shots. Just Thrive's digestive bitters give you the power of 12 clinically proven herbs that help your body break down food efficiently while naturally supporting GLP-1 production. Controlled cravings, less bloat, steady energy, and comfortable digestion. Try Just Thrive Digestive Bitters and Just Thrive Probiotic 2 today at justthrivehealth.com and use code Megan for 20% off your first order. That's justthrivehealth.com, code Megan. Your body will thank you.
All right, welcome back to MK True Crime. Arthur Aidala, Phil Holloway, Matthew Murphy, and let's get some updates on the Ghislaine Maxwell case. For full disclosure, I do represent Ghislaine Maxwell in different areas of her criminal proceedings. I was able to speak to, I didn't speak to her today, but I've spoken to people who have spoken to her, members of her family and friends. And it's no secret that she's been moved to a different facility out of Tallahassee, Florida, and over to Texas in a much more habitable environment. It's still prison. Nobody wants to be in prison. But the Tallahassee facility where I visited her and spent time with her was not, and they weren't nice to me. And I was there just to be a lawyer for a couple of hours. But the place where she's in now is definitely a much better environment for any human being to be in. The real breaking news is that the Department of Justice asked for her grand jury minutes to be released. And I'll throw it out to the gentleman here. The judges said, no, we're not going to do that. I'll start with Mr. Murphy. Why don't you tell us why?
So every grand jury is supposed to be secret. And one of the interesting things about this story is just there's so much hot blood and it's so heated politically that a lot of people, I think it's easy to do when they get caught up in the emotion of a case like this. They kind of forget some of the fundamental important things about totally apolitical law. And one of those is grand jury proceedings are supposed to be secret. There's an intense amount of public interest in this case, of course. And the federal judge said, look, the grand jury transcripts reveal nothing new. The only people that are really discussed are your client, Ms. Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein, and that's it. So it's not going to do the purpose that they're trying to release it for. And look, in my view on this one, I think the judge did the right thing here by keeping the grand jury proceedings secret.
Phil, were they out of order to even ask? Was the Department of Justice? Because look, folks have to understand, the Department of Justice, they know what's in the minutes. They know what's in the grand jury transcripts. So knowing that, because these judges wrote, there's nothing in here that's going to enlighten the public. Were they wrong, Phil Holloway, for asking to unseal these grand jury minutes, which is so rare?
Well, it is rare. I don't know that I'm qualified to say whether they were wrong or they're right. I think there's a political calculus that goes into that. But you pointed out correctly that they know who said what to the grand jury. They were there. Some lawyer for the DOJ was there, and they keep their files too. And so when the judge says, look, I've looked at this stuff, and I've concluded there's nothing new here. There's no information here that would point to any other individuals or any other clients who may have abused young girls at the behest of any of the defendants in the case, or Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. And so I'm just going to go ahead and preserve grand jury secrecy. I mean, at the 10,000-foot level, I get it. And I think that's the right thing. I think that the judge should not just casually or cavalierly expose grand jury minutes to whatever the public wants to do with them. There's a reason why they're secret, and there's a reason why we need to keep them secret, because lots of times, look, grand juries investigate people and then they decide there's no evidence, maybe they're innocent or there's not enough evidence against them. And so you can't just start dragging names out through the public domain when they happen to be associated with somebody that everybody hates, like a Jeffrey Epstein. So conceptually, it makes great sense to me why you would not want to just willy-nilly have everybody's name who's ever been associated with Jeffrey Epstein being discussed on every news program, every podcast, all social media, because merely being associated with Jeffrey Epstein is toxic. And so you absolutely could ruin innocent people's lives by saying that at one point in time they were someone that was considered to be potentially under investigation. Okay, even though the investigation bore no fruit.
I don't want to interrupt you because I was about to say that's probably the most important point that's going to be made in this whole session. Because I've watched it. I'm sure we all have. Associations with somebody like that have brought people to, really wrecked careers. And I think Alan Dershowitz wrote the book, Guilt by Accusation. It's even gotten worse than that. It's like guilt by association. And as Ray Donovan, the former labor secretary, said when he was cleared of all charges back in the 1980s, where do I go to get my reputation back? And in the world of social media, it's very, very difficult to get your reputation back. So I applaud the Department of Justice for being so reluctant regarding information they have, not the grand jury minutes, but the information they have, and not just throwing people's names out there saying, oh, yeah, he knew Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein knew this person, and this one's phone number was there. It's caution should be really the driving force of the day, Mr. Holloway. You are 100% correct. Let's talk about how about jail? Let's talk about jail. And someone who pled guilty to life sentences is now in jail, Mr. Kohberger. And apparently he's not having a good time in jail. I don't know many people who have a good time in jail. I know our friend Mr. Garagos is saying that the Menendez brothers are making the best out of their 35 years in jail, but it's usually a rough place to be. And when you're charged with killing 4 and pled guilty to killing 4 beautiful young people, I guess your fellow inmates aren't too excited to give you a warm welcome. Mr. Murphy, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing, Arthur, like when you deal with serial killers, people would be shocked at how often they'll come into a courtroom and complain. They complain about the temperature of the room. They complain about the meals. They are the one person that all of these guys care about are themselves. They don't care about anybody else. And of course, he's going to get hazed. He's going to get harassed a little bit. Now, he's what is known as a total SEP in California. So he's completely separated from other inmates. But apparently, information's come out that these guys are yelling at him through the vents, that they're using the vent system to harass Bryan Kohberger. I personally will lose no sleep over that. He's protected physically. But of course he's complaining because these guys always do. They always have complaints. So, it's not exactly breaking my heart that prison is uncomfortable for him, especially given what I think was a real sweetheart deal for him by the DA.
Well, we could have that discussion. I think I had it with Megan. Is when you're that young, living the rest of your decades in prison, is that better than, in 5 or 7 years laying on a gurney and putting a little needle in your arm and just going to sleep the way we do to our dogs when they get to a certain age? That's a debate for another day. Mr. Holloway, what are your thoughts about how Mr. Kohberger is being treated in jail so far?
Well, to your point, though, they've got the firing squad. Okay. Out there, so he would be spending the rest of his days wondering if the marksman is going to be true, right, and is going to get it right the first time around, and how bad it's going to hurt. So he's been spared that, mental endeavor in his brain, but he has to listen to everybody jeering at him, screaming at him through the vents. And talking about the complaining, he started complaining when he was first arrested because he wanted vegan food and all this. And look, I posted this on X just the other day. I said, look, prison is supposed to be punishment. It's punishment for a reason. And I'm not going to lose any sleep either over the fact that he's having a hard time. He would be having a much harder time if he were not absolutely separated physically from the other inmates. But there will come a day when he's going to be in general population. I believe that the state has even said as much. They're not going to keep him separate forever. He's going to be in general population. We've seen with Jeffrey Dahmer and other folks what sometimes can happen when high profile or inmates who are particularly despised by the other inmates. We've seen how difficult it can be on the inside. And so I certainly have no qualms getting a good night's sleep knowing that he's being jeered at through the vents. But I did notice, and you guys I'm sure did too, the things that have come out about his case that I think are very, very fascinating, like he was on the phone with his mother right after the killings, and that he's on the phone with his mother. He calls her mother, by the way, kind of like, what's that show?
Norman Bates.
Norman Bates, right? He refers to a mother and father and sister. He refers to them in that way, and he spends an enormous amount of time chattering with his mother right after these killings took place, and it's just a little bit, it's just unnerving to me. I don't know what you guys think, but it's just unnerving that he's on the phone with his mother while he's apparently returning to the crime scene right after he brutally killed those wonderful young people.
And to give the inmates a little ammunition to really fall in love with Mr. Kohberger, they've been releasing some crime scene photos as well that are pretty horrific. Matt Murphy, when you were a prosecutor much longer than I was. I was there for barely 5 years. How much did you take into consideration, not a guy like Kohberger, but when you had to sentence a guy and, you were recommending like serious jail time, did you take these factors into consideration, what their life was going to be like? I mean, I know you said, they're always complaining about something, but how much does a prosecutor, let the viewers know and the listeners know, like how much does a seasoned prosecutor as you were take the life in prison into account when you're throwing around numbers?
Well, when you're negotiating cases, it's a big deal, because if you're talking about giving somebody a local time offer, and these are the lower ranks of cases like generic felonies. The difference between prison and local jail can be pretty stark. California, they do a pretty good job generally of classifying them. In other words, if you're a nonviolent guy, but you're going to the joint, as they call it, you're going to state prison, you're going to go to what's called a level 1 or a level 2 prison where you're not with like the gang guys or the Mexican mafia, and you're not going to have a big target on your back. But for some of those hardcore guys, especially if they were young and they were going to the joint for the first or second time, you definitely factor that in for sure. Like a young guy who's going in, you might give him what's called low term if he's going to state prison, because he's going to have a rough time and he's going to have to deal with some of the politics and the violence. When it comes to murder, however, and you're dealing with the bereaved families, especially, I don't know what, the moms always really got to me. When you're dealing with the family of a murder victim, as a prosecutor, you don't give two hoots about what their life is going to be like once they get up to the joint, because you're dealing with that palpable, that apoplectic, it's so thick when you meet with those families. Families get destroyed by it. And guys like Kohberger, the human wreckage that guy left as a result of that, that's the thing, Art. I just don't, you don't factor
and look, in
much.
terms of human wreckage, and since you brought that up, they released a bunch of photographs, which is a little odd at this point. A bunch of the crime scene photographs have been made public now. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. That's not typical.
They're heavily redacted.
Yeah, but still, they usually don't wind up in the. I mean, usually the prosecutor doesn't release it, and the defense attorney definitely doesn't want to release it because it doesn't make their client look too well. And there are some that we're going to show that have bloody piles of blood. And I mean, look, you're looking at, that's a typical college room. They were clearly playing the. I don't know, the young producers here would know. What's that pong thing that they're playing? The ping pong, beer pong. Yeah, so producers had no problem shouting that answer in my ear. Yes, the beer pong. And it just breaks your heart. And I understand what you're saying. Matt, as a prosecutor on a murder case, and you have a family member. Look, talk about mental illness. I mean, this guy's got it all going on. But does Phil Holloway any idea about a motive regarding this guy? Why, what was in it? I know they found surveillance of him and his Wi-Fi password on one of the restaurants where they worked, where the young ladies worked, or two of them. I think two of them worked. Any clue what motive may have been? What motivated this guy?
He was obsessed with researching serial killers. So I think part of it, it's going to be a complicated motive if we ever can figure it out, but it's going to be multifaceted. He wanted to emulate some of his heroes, which apparently were various serial killers. He did a lot of research on that, but he also, I think, researched some of these victims, maybe all of them, but certainly a couple of the young ladies who worked in a pizza restaurant, a vegan pizza restaurant, by the way. It was determined that his phone had accessed that Wi-Fi network. And so I think that he was a little bit infatuated. I do think there was some kind of sexual component to it. And not that there was a sexual assault, but when it comes to serial killers, or in this case, a wannabe serial killer who was just getting active, there is oftentimes a psychosexual component to the motivation behind serial killers. And that's something that we could do an entire show on, actually. But I believe that he would have been a serial killer if he hadn't been caught. I think he was just trying to start out on his career. And I think that's why we saw this selfie that he took right after the killings of him basically giving a thumbs up, because he was very proud of himself. And so he was saying, look, this is my new career and I'm just getting underway, and I'm going to be the best serial killer there's ever been. So it's going to be complicated. His mind is a mess, but it's got to be some combination of all that. He wanted to be a serial killer. He was just getting active.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about an accused serial killer out of Oregon who pled not guilty. And I know Phil is all fired up to give us some updates on Donna Adelson. Don't go away.
Afternoons can be rough. Energy fades, cravings kick in, focus goes out the window. The quick fix, another coffee, but that can lead to jitters or a crash later, or can interfere with sleep. Peak's Sun Goddess Matcha is another option. It can give steady energy and help you focus without the ups and downs. This is not just any matcha. It's organic, ceremonial grade, and grown in Japan's pure volcanic soil far away from pollution. It's harvested by tea masters and screened for toxins not once, but 4 times. That is how serious they are about quality. The taste is smooth, creamy, and rich, not bitter like lower quality matcha. It's packed with antioxidants to keep you sharp and steady. Whether it's how the day starts or how it gets back on track, this matcha is not just a drink. It can be a better daily habit. Right now, you can get up to 20% off for life, plus a free rechargeable frother and glass beaker. It's backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee. Go to peaklife.com/Megan. That's PIQUE life.com/Megan to try it for yourself. Again, that's PIQUE life.com/Megan.
Welcome back to MK True Crime. Arthur Aidala, Matt Murphy, Phil Holloway, and we are going to start with Jesse Lee Calhoun. He is accused serial killer of 3, and now they've just added 4. Oh, now the 4th victim. He's pled not guilty. Matthew Murphy, what are we saying about this?
Well, this case is really interesting. So this guy got out very, very prolific. I mean, of course, he's presumed innocent, right? But if it turns out that he actually committed these murders, and it based on what we know so far, the evidence looks very strong. This guy was very, very active. And what's really, I think, a cautionary tale here is this: he was in prison from 2019. He received a 5-year sentence. And for burglary, and there's information, it's a little bit sketchy on his background at this point, but he may have tried to choke a police dog. He's a bad guy, okay? And he worked on a fire crew, and during those big fires that we had in Oregon a couple years ago, he wound up getting his sentence commuted by the governor of Oregon. Her name was Kate Brown, and she represents a trend, especially in the Western United States, of these very, very hard left progressive governors who are they get into the words sound great, like criminal justice reform, and that sounds all warm and fuzzy. But what a lot of them do is they aggressively let these guys out. It's like we had a guy, our DA in LA is a guy named George Gascon. He just lost his reelection by like 30 points. These are the hard left who essentially want to release a lot of these people. This guy got his sentence commuted. Now, it looks like all of these victims were murdered after he would have been released anyway, but he was released early. And one of the things that is, I think, very interesting for people to pay attention to is, are there going to be any other victims that turn up that were murdered during the time that he was in prison? And let me share a quick personal story here. I was the prosecutor on the Rodney Alcala case. He was convicted of kidnapping an 8-year-old girl in 1968. He fled. He was extradited, this whole thing. He wound up getting, for a brutal kidnapping of an 8-year-old little girl, he wound up getting 34 months actual in state prison. And when he was released, he got a life sentence. They released him after 34 months. He murdered, according to the calculations by the lead detective on the case, who's now a Superior Court judge, he estimates he murdered 100 innocent people. We prosecuted him, right, about 100.
Hold on, let me just make sure I got this. He received a life sentence, but he got out in under 3 years?
That's right. He received a life sentence. It was based on what's called the indeterminate sentencing laws in the early 70s in the state of California. He received a life sentence for a simple 288. They gave him a simple child molest for a kidnapping. It was a cascade of failures. But this guy, he got out and he murdered dozens and dozens of people. And that is it reminds me of Alcala. And again, out of fairness to this governor, looks like every charged victim, he would have been released anyway. But she commuted the sentence of every single person. They had 17 people on death row. Her last act, like one of those midnight things, as she's leaving office, she commuted the death penalty of every single person on death row in the state of Oregon, giving them life without possibility of parole sentences. But there's also big movements in California and Oregon and the state of Washington to eliminate LWOP, or life without possibility of parole, as a sentence that ultimately will those guys almost certainly will get parole hearings one day. And I think that is something that people need to be talking about this. People need to be aware of it, because we've been down this road before in the early 70s in the state of California, and there are hundreds of innocent people who died as a result of those lenient policies. And there was a great quote by one of the people that there's outrage after this guy was arrested. He called this governor's clemency petitions reckless leniency. And it's a great term, reckless leniency. And this has nothing to do with partisan politics, guys. This is all about public safety. These guys are predators. You can't fix them. And when they are released, especially in reckless ways, innocent people die. So just kind of I wanted to point this one out. Thanks for letting me rant a little bit on this one, Arthur. This is one of those things that hits close to home. It bugs me. This one really bothers me.
It's your career, and thank you for sharing that with us. Life in prison, you come out in 34 months. That's a little whacked out. But speaking of whacked out, how about Donna Adelson? Phil Holloway, talk to me about Donna. And, it's a murder for hire plot. She's on game shows. Talk to me. Come on, fill us in. This is your moment, Phil. Shine.
Well, this is one that we're going to be going big on here with the MK True Crime. Dan Markel was the FSU law professor that was murdered execution style by some gang members back in 2014. A number of people have been convicted, including the gang members. The son of Donna Adelson, Charlie, who was a dentist in South Florida, Miami, he, and along with his girlfriend at the time, who was sort of the go-between, they've been convicted. There's been a number of trials. And so now we're on the eve of trial for the matriarch of this alleged crime family, Donna Adelson. And so jury selection is set to begin, and it's amazing that here we are in August of 2025, and this murder was in 2014, so many years ago. But it's important to remember that the police had to stay with this. It never really quite went cold, but they did have a they came up against some roadblocks. They were having a hard time sort of developing the case, particularly against the mother, Donna. And so they decided to do something, I don't want to say it's unusual, but it was certainly creative. It's being referred to as the bump, which is where a undercover officer just bumps into her when she's out going about her day. And for those of you who are listening on podcasts, what we're going to be seeing and looking at is you're going to be looking at this undercover who's approaching her in a parking lot, and he hands her a note. It's got his phone number on it. You'll hear the audio. So let's go ahead and call 411 and take a look at that, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. You're scared. No, don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Luto for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through the way you're taking care of Katie and Tuzo. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
So
Phil, give us some context. Put that into perspective.
Helping your family with this problem up north. Remember, she's down in South Florida, the Miami area. Up north is Tallahassee, same state, but it's quite a ways away. And so what does she do? She just kind of carries on with her day, and I think goes to see her grandkids later that day. You know, if this were me or you guys tell me, what would you do if someone approached you and says, you know, I'm the brother of this hitman, and I expect you guys to take care of him. And if you're an innocent person, Matt, how would you react?
Well, you probably dial 911 before the guy's even out of sight, right? I mean, that's a super weird thing, but I'm sure you guys were thinking the same thing I was. I mean, this.
I was thinking I was just going to write out the check for $5,000 and hand it over to the dude. I'm sure he wants a check. I mean, I don't know if they take credit cards.
What's awesome about this, from our perspective, or at least from mine, is that how this woman didn't immediately peg that guy as a cop, and they did a great job on this. The prosecution.
Well, let's talk about how sharp she is. Can I call for her on Wheel of Fortune? I think that's SOT number 9.
And we now meet Donna Adelson from Coral Springs, Florida. I want to hear all about you, Donna. Let's go.
Well,
like the hair.
I'm a domestic coordinator.
A domestic coordinator?
Yes. I'm responsible for the activities, classes, and lessons of my son Robert, who is 16, Charlie, who is 12, Wendy, who is 10, my husband Harvey, who's in the audience, and my dog Sam.
Donna.
F.
Yes.
Mischief maker.
Yeah, that's it, Donna.
Oh, wow. Isn't that rich? Mischief maker, huh? I mean, did we plan that, Phil Holloway?
No, I mean, look, just the craziness surrounding this whole case is.
I liked your hair, by the way, for the record. I was grooving on that.
Well, it was obviously in, what was that, the 80s or something like that.
Yeah,
but anyway,
it's 86. Yep.
We started this show talking about a stupid criminal, right? And so what I want to go to next is the next piece of stupidity that I think is going to wind up sort of hanging the Adelson crime family and the matriarch of that crime family, because what happened is, instead of, calling the police or calling a lawyer saying, help me out with this, she talks to her son, Charlie, and she says, Charlie, this guy gave me this note, right? And so what does Charlie do? Charlie, about 9 days later, decides he's just going to go ahead and give that guy a call. And so we've got that. Let's go ahead and play SOT 11, and you'll hear how Charlie interacts with the undercover cop who he thinks is related to the hitman.
All right, what's going on? Well, what's going on is my brother Tato. Okay, my brother Tato has not been taken care of. His family's not been taken care of. I talked to a dentist. Why are you calling me? Who are you? I gave the number to a lady. I don't know Tato. You don't know Tato? I'm sure you know Katie and Tuto. They've been taken care of since the family problem been taken care of up north.
I don't know who you are.
You don't? Well, this isn't going away, my friend. Because let me tell you something. I was at Broward with Tato, and he told me the whole story.
All right, let me look at it.
No more f***ing around, man. No more f***ing around. This ain't going away. You guys need to do the right thing for Tato.
Matt Murphy, I don't think you're hanging out with a lot of guys named Tato. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're good buddies named Tato, but
not this entire week. Not this
entire week. So Phil, what was going on? I mean, go ahead.
That of course is the voice of Charlie, right? The kid that she was talking about, that she was the domestic coordinator for, and Charlie has been convicted of this. He was the instrumental in the murder of Dan Markel, and this is one of those. This case is so disturbing on so many different levels, but that Donna Adelson is accused essentially of orchestrating this whole thing because she wanted her grandkids to move from Tallahassee to South Florida. And there's apparently extensive parental alienation going on from Adelson, from Mrs. Adelson, regarding her ex-son-in-law. And and I'm sure you've seen this too, guys. In the homicide unit in Orange County, I cannot tell you how many murders began in family court and wound up with somebody getting killed later that night or 2 days later after an adverse family court ruling. And that's exactly what they had here. So Charlie, the voice we just heard, no more presumed innocent. He was convicted of this, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to Donna Adelson next, because the evidence is pretty bad, pretty damning against her.
Jury selection is coming up, Mr. Holloway. You ready to pick a jury for your client?
Yeah, I think you could almost take the first 12 if you're the prosecutor and put them in the box, because the evidence, in my opinion, certainly the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. And circumstantial evidence, by the way, can be some of the most powerful evidence in a criminal case. A lot of people serving life in prison on powerful circumstantial evidence. Among that, in this case, is Charlie, his words when he's talking to who he believes is the brother of the hitman, he doesn't say, look, we don't know who you're talking about. My mom doesn't know who you're talking about. Leave us alone. Why are you bothering us? He doesn't do that. He's like, hey, let me get back to you, right? Like as if he knows exactly what's going on. And that statement, that recording, and all of that interaction that stems directly from the bump is going to be a big part of what I think is going to bring Donna Adelson down.
Right. Well, gentlemen, we certainly covered a lot of ground today, and I found it very fascinating. Matthew, your career as a prosecutor is storied, and having you here is fantastic. And Mr. Holloway, well, obviously your opinion counts because you're everywhere all the time. So thank you, both of you, for joining me, and thanks everyone for joining us today at MK True Crime. I'm Arthur Aidala. And remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us wherever you get your podcast. We're MK True Crime on all social platforms, and find all the links you need at mktruecrime.com. See you Wednesday.